graceful.
Of course, I can't even make it to the seated position without screwing up the setup here. Good Lord. All right. Podcast 8 Million Ways to Skin a Cat. Hello. Is it me you're looking for? I gotta pull up the... Get a drink of water before I...
There you go. Just don't let it spill down your sweatshirt.
Not that I'm clean anyways.
Well, I know. I was clean this morning until I went out to the shop before I came over.
You know what fools call this, right?
No.
Man glitter.
Oh, yes. I have a t-shirt with that on, I think. A friend gave it to me. I just smiled and thank you.
It's just one of those things. I didn't like, I don't know. It's...
Well, yeah, there's a lot.
We got to come up with a term just for getting sawdust on us.
Yep.
Anyways, hey guys, welcome back to the Woodworking Podcast. My name is Nick, and I can be found at nickferry.com, joined with my co-host Bob Close, who can be found at bobclose.com or bobclose456
on Instagram.
All right, let's get right into... Oh, before we get into the meat and potatoes, I guess, of it, and of course I'm juggling around here. And anyone that knows me well knows that I would be a procrastinator if I didn't keep putting it off. But for anyone watching on our YouTube channel, you can go to, there would be a link. I don't think we have like a vanity URL yet. But anyways,
okay.
Special thanks to everyone on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/The Woodworking Podcast, and you can help contribute over there and support the show. Thank you so much, everyone on Patreon. I just realized that when we started doing this, I don't know how I'm going to be able to monitor this. But anyways, we're trying to get these audio issues worked out. And what I was talking about with my procrastination was, for those that do watch on YouTube, having a round table and some pub height chairs and stuff. And Bob was nice enough to bring these today. And so we're winging it.
Yep.
I don't know why people don't believe it when I tell them I'm winging it.
Well, you kind of look like you're a navigator in a B-52. You've got wires and crap all over the place. That's okay.
All right. So the topic for today, and Bob and I were just discussing this. I gave him a whole 5 minutes heads up. The topic for today is 8 million ways to skin a cat. And so do you want to just go right into that topic, or do you
Sure.
want to go into something?
Nope,
Okay.
that's fine.
It's kind of a reoccurring theme. Questions I see amongst the community, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on any of the woodworking forums or at the guild meetings and meetups and all this stuff is, well, I can't do that because I don't have that, and fill in the blank. And I can't do that. I don't have a drum sander. I can't do that. I don't have a table saw. I can't do that.
I don't have a lathe.
Yeah.
I don't have whatever. Yeah.
Which lathe is a perfect example, considering I look to my left because that's where I used to have my drill press, but I turned my drill press into a lathe.
Yep.
And I did chest pieces, I did salt and pepper shakers, all sorts of little cylinders and tiny little spindles and different shaped wheels for kids' toys. And I know.
It's the old, where there's a will, there's a way. You got to figure out, if you don't have something, and I think that's, and I don't mean to sound political, but that's something the country has lost as a way to figure things out.
Yeah.
Whether it be making your car work when you don't think it should. And I know, it's not like the 30s where you can wire something on and it's going to go. But you just have to figure things out when you don't have the tool that you need, that you can make something else work and get the job done. Or you find somebody that you do the job, they do the job for you. Whatever, you hire it out, you just get it done.
Yeah.
As somebody who makes a living out of woodworking, I don't own a lathe anymore. I had legs, pedestals, whatever, that were turned over the years, and I just don't do a lot of that anymore. And if I do, I've got somebody I can go to and have it done. And it's just as easy for me to do that as to do it myself. The same way, if you don't have a table saw that you can cut thick stock on, use a bandsaw.
Yeah.
you can do a lot of joinery on a bandsaw versus a table saw. You may not be as accurate, but then you use some sandpaper, whatever, to make things fit.
Yeah, a way to clean it up.
Yeah,
It's a different cut. It's a different animal altogether. And going more into when you were saying you're not a turner, but a lot of the things you sold would have a center spindle or something,
right,
and you'd hire somebody out. That's another thing I think for people to keep in mind is, me personally, I like kind of dabbling in everything. I don't consider myself an expert in any one particular area, but there are certain things to where people are just going to find that they don't like.
right.
And, there's nothing wrong with that, hiring that out or
Nope.
whatever. It just goes back to, if there's a will, there's a way. You wanted to make these tables, and you did all the other work. You did all the, the tops and the cutting of the legs out and everything on the bottom. And by the way, if anyone wondering, these are kind of like a 3-leg shaker style table. I guess is probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah, there's 3 legs, 4 legs. I mean, they're all different things. You can bargain with people. If you don't do turning and they do, maybe you can do the finishing for them. I mean, I've done that for a lot of people where I'll finish the piece for them, if they get it so far, because they don't like to finish. There's nothing wrong with trading what you do with someone else and helping them out, and you helping them, you helping them and they help you. Oops.
No, I completely agree. I forgot to time the episode again.
Okay.
We just have so much fun, and then and I can't.
The blind leading the blind.
I've told this story a couple times where I did different theater sets and all sorts of, and I mean, we're talking pretty in-depth, pretty large theater sets, 2-3 stories tall, 4-5 sets of staircases. Some of the sets have spun, all sorts of interactive things that are coming in, and I've done all that with pretty much just a miter saw and an impact or a drill, and that's the whole point. Is I mean, at that the one theater set I'm thinking of, I didn't even so much as have a table saw on site, and so you get a circular saw and an edge guide. Is it always going to be as accurate? Is it always going to be as efficient or as quick? No, but it's you got to almost kind of persevere and say, how bad do I? Maybe you're making a table, a rustic table, or I don't know. I'm just trying to pick an example, but at the end of the day, you can't. Well, hey man, I could make $50, $100, $150 on this.
Yep.
Are you going to say no? I can't because I don't have a table saw. I don't. My doorboard track saw thing is. I mean, you're talking $4 or $5 to build that,
right?
And it's pretty accurate.
I don't mean to date myself, but I grew up before there were computers and YouTube and everything else, and I went to the library and taught myself.
Yeah,
I read things, tried things, and did it. I didn't have a computer to find out information for me. I had to go look it up. We didn't have track saws and things like that. We had, like you said about your doorboard saw or whatever, and call it what you will. It's a saw and a wooden guide. It isn't real hard, and I think anybody can afford a skill saw, or even if it's a cheap one and you only got to make a few cuts. You may get crappy edges from your blade, but there's always ways you can get around things.
Yeah.
A router is a great tool. You can do a ton of things with a router. That with the bits nowadays, that 40 years ago, they didn't have spiral carbide bits and trim bits and all that sort of thing like what you see now. But you found a way to do it.
Yep.
I've used a router as a joiner.
Yeah.
It works. It just takes a little thinking of what you're going to do, but you want to remove a little bit of an edge, and you build a little bit of an offset fence to compensate for it. It's not hard.
Yeah, I would actually go so far as to say the router is probably one of the more underutilized tools in the shop.
Oh, it is.
Because people don't necessarily, they automatically think, well, I could add a decorative edge, like an OG or something like that. But they're not necessarily thinking, well, I got a flush trim bit or even a compression bit, and I can make a pattern, and now I can batch out 20 of these, and you're talking like a glass clean edge.
Yep.
By the time you're done with it. Or mortises.
Yep.
I got a video coming up where I was going to show the simplest way to do mortises with a router anyways. and it's just one of those things to where, man, yeah, it doesn't get any simpler than that.
Nope. Nope.
Or sticking it in a table, router table, raised panel. I'm just trying to think of what you almost can't do with a router.
Well, yeah, I was always a shaper guy, and a buddy of mine that's built furniture for years in Virginia has always used routers, and we both accomplished what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
He does it with routers, I do it with shapers. But there's so much you can do with a router, and yeah, you can become a router pig like me and have 20 or 30 of them, but you leave them set up with things that you do most often, and it's just grab it and go.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not so bad as to have 20 or 30 yet. I think I'm only up to like 7 or 8.
You're doing okay.
I was just switching out a bit the other day, and I got 3 of them sitting there, which is...
Yep, I can see them from here.
But routers are, because, for example, that DeWalt one sitting there, that I have set for those Brusso hinges that I was doing for that box.
Yep.
Well, that's set to like 1,000th of an inch depth. Well, I don't want to mess with that now. I didn't finish the box. So I had to do some We'll get to that. But I had to do some chamfers on a leg yesterday, and so I just got out a different router.
Yep.
It's a sickness.
It is, but they're handy. And I'm looking at yours, and I've got all big ones. Yours, you've got those little trim ones, which are nice. I've got one little trim one that I keep I used to do miles of Formica, and I really don't like Formica. But if you want to trim Formica, those little trim routers work great with a little miter trim bit on it, and it looks nice.
Yeah, those. See, now I'm in the shop. I'm trying not to turn my head away from the camera, but the Bosch Colt one, that's trim router, and then the DeWalt one. But then that Hitachi, that's a full size one.
Yeah, that's yep.
And then I the bigger Porter cable in my router table, and then an older Craftsman in my smaller router table. Yeah. Do you ever remember my parents when a TV set used to be like a wood cased thing?
Yep.
And so if a TV broke, then when you got the new TV, you put the new TV on the old TV.
Yep.
And that's kind of how I grew up. That's what my router tables look like right now. I have my small benchtop router table is sitting atop my floor model router table.
Yeah, it's amazing. I remember making a liquor cabinet for a couple out of one of those old TVs, and I about killed myself reaching in there with those tubes. I didn't realize those tubes could hold an electric charge.
Mm-hmm. The capacitors.
Yeah, and I mean, this was an old TV, and it hadn't been used in years, but it made a really loud noise and really made a big bright light when I hit that tube.
Those vacuum tubes are definitely an interesting animal.
Yes, they are.
Or even the advent of the transistor radio, people don't realize how far the funny thing is, my dad and I were talking. My dad's a kind of a history buff. He actually got his degree to be a history teacher. He didn't ever end up being a history teacher, but that's a whole nother discussion. But we were talking. I couldn't believe the short time period in the U.S. that it went from humans not being able to fly to landing a man on the moon.
Yep.
I mean, the gap there was only, I think, 60, 65 years.
My grandma traveled in a wagon train when she was under 10. She flew in a jet back in the early 60s. I can remember it. She always said, she says, I've seen everything. That just was...
That's crazy.
Yeah.
When did we first land on the moon? 69? Yeah. And first flight, what was that? That wasn't Whitney Field. What was that? Or was it Whitney Field?
No,
Wright brothers.
The first, that was on the beach. Down in North Carolina.
Oh, yeah. But it was like 1909?
I thought 1903.
1903.
Yeah.
That's a short period. That's an
is.
Advancement of technology
yes,
right
there.
there.
Yes, it is. Yep.
And now they're making TVs, rather than a big tube TV like that, now they're making TVs as thin as almost paper.
Yeah, and they're a whole lot lighter.
Yeah.
And they're a lot bigger. That cabinet I can remember was like 7 feet long. Now you have TVs that long, but the picture in that big TV was like under 20 inches. I know that,
one of the sad things about the technology advancing as far as TVs, though, is some of the woodwork on those older TVs was actually pretty nice.
Oh, yeah, it was.
It was actually it was a standalone piece of furniture in your home.
That's true.
versus, you just wall mount them now.
Yep. We're digressing off our thing though, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh.
Just a little bit.
Sorry. Keep my hands under control.
Yeah, so the main topic. I mean, we can definitely get off track.
Yes.
I'm good at it.
We both are.
But 8 million ways. Can you think of any tool in the shop? 8 million ways to skin a cat. One tool that maybe people don't necessarily think to use traditionally, or we're talking a bandsaw.
A bandsaw is one. I mean, you can resaw on it. You can cut lumber to width. It's not always it's not always a clean cut. I mean, you can cut things to length. You can cut them to width. You can cut shapes. You can. At one time, Delta had a sanding belt that you could actually put in their bandsaw, and then it had a little gizmo that you could use it to like sand edges. One of the things when I was first getting into woodworking was the radial arm saw.
Yeah.
When I went to Sears to buy my first table saw, that salesman, all he wanted to sell me was a radial arm saw, because you could do 5,000 things with a radial arm saw that you couldn't do with a table saw. And I never drank the Kool-Aid for the radial arm saw. I like them. I mean, I got 2 of them, but I use them strictly to cut things off, and it's not even to length. It's just rough cuts.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've never liked the whole thing of ripping on them or things like that.
My favorite part was the dado stack above.
Yep.
To where you could see.
Yep, where you could see where you're cutting.
Yeah. Any type of trellises or anything, anywhere you're spacing it out, your layout lines, you can see and scoot over. Yeah, I like that a lot.
I've got I think it's from Delta. Delta or DeWalt, one of them had a book on things you could do, and they actually had it where they had the blade turned sideways and they were doing plunge cuts on plywood.
Really?
On the radial arm saw, and I'm going, wow, I don't think OSHA would like that anymore. But yeah, the radial arm saw was always like the
Swiss Army knife.
Yeah, I mean, it was like shopsmith. You could do 5 different things, 10 different things with one tool by converting it and all that. And I remember when I first got married, going to a shopsmith show out at the bowling alley in Appleton, and I really wanted to buy one so bad.
Really?
Oh, I just thought that was the cat's meow, because one tool and you could do 100 different things, and the guy made it look so nice and simple.
Yeah.
And of course, everything he worked on was about a foot long, so it really wasn't too much of anything. But yeah, I thought that was just the cat's backside. All the things you could do on it, and I'm really glad I never got one. God had a plan, so that was good.
I never liked them. I've never owned one, but I've been on one maybe half a dozen times. But I'm a big fan of having certain tools do designated tasks.
Yep.
As I mentioned, the routers before. I mean, even I know with you with your dovetail jig, you have a straight bit and a dovetail bit and a router in each, but that way you can grab and go.
Yep.
You don't need adjusting. Nope. You know that you can knock out dovetails real quick. The funny thing is too, when I got my Laguna band saw, my wife was like, "You're gonna get rid of your Icon, my benchtop one." I'm like, "Well, no." I said, "That'll have a narrower blade, and that'll be for curve cuts, and I'll probably just keep a resaw blade in my larger one."
Yep.
But it's not to say that you can't use a tool in weird ways.
Yep. I mean, even table saws, the things you can do on a table saw, it's not like cutting with a saber saw where you can cut curves and angles, but I've actually seen they did make jigs at one time where you could cut circles and things like that.
I tried that once or twice, and the wow factor is there.
Yeah. But it's not something I would use every day.
It is monotonous, because you end up, basically taking a square, making it turn into an octagon, and you're just knocking off corner after corner and corner until you can get a free spin out of it.
Yep, exactly.
One thing that is, if anyone hasn't tried this on a table saw, that is actually ultra satisfying, is cutting coves. Mm-hmm. Raise the blade slightly and have a couple auxiliary fences and run the wood sideways.
Yep.
And just with that and like even a little router, there's a myriad of profiles that you can make.
When I used to do a lot of the same type of furniture, I made up a lot of jigs that fit certain pieces, and I would do a lot of pattern cutting off the table saw, which not everyone does, but you could make basically a wooden fence that sat over top of your blade, and then you took your pattern and attached it to the piece you wanted to cut, and you could take that pattern and cut it against the fence, and you could cut, triangles or whatever you wanted to cut, and everything was consistent. Like when I do corner cabinets, all the shelves were consistent and everything. So
I did that not too long ago. Man, time flies. I was going to say not too long ago, but I'm like, it's probably already been about 6 years since I've done this. But a local trophy shop was doing some laser work, and they needed this. Essentially, I think it was a pentagon. I can't remember exactly how many sides it had, but it was asymmetrical to where I think like the peak came out a little further than the legs, but the same thing. I had that pattern, a little bit of double-sided tape, and then that pattern rested against the table saw fence.
Yep, exactly.
And I could do all cuts, and start to finish, one little plaque. I think I had 3 minutes, 3 minutes into it.
It's amazing what you could do. And especially if you're doing multiples of something, it's nice to be able to run patterns against whether it's a router or a table saw or whatever. It's nice to help keep consistency.
I don't know why that makes me think of my buddy Leldon. I'll leave a link in the article or whatever to his YouTube channel. But he cuts out, I was just telling Bob, he cuts out these Alabamas and repetitive, And I should make the joke to him. I said, with as many, he cuts out hundreds, if not thousands of these Alabamas and sells them wholesale on the scroll saw. With the amount that he's cutting in his home state, I'm surprised he hasn't moved to Colorado. Just think of how many more he could cut.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, those square states are a whole lot easier.
I actually saw something on the History Channel explaining why certain states have their shapes, and it's pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah?
A lot of times it's fight over waterways and shorelines and stuff for, shipping. Okay. But anyways, I get off topic again. Going back to the radial arm saw, one thing that I thought I would utilize when I had a radial arm saw, one thing I thought I'd utilize, and I really never did as much, is turning the head 90 degrees and doing long rip cuts.
I've never liked it.
Yeah, it felt unnatural.
I remember when I first went to work for a company, and the guy did that with the radial arm saw. He was a union carpenter, and trouble was he fed it from the wrong end, and I never saw a board go 200 miles an hour in my life. Just
wow, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is, considering he went through his apprenticeship and he was working there for like 10 years, and I was just a stooge, but at least I knew not to go from the wrong end.
But speaking of mistakes, we'll get off topic just a real quick second. Bob had done a live edge top out of curly maple, right?
Yep.
Curly soft maple, and a little over 2 inches thick, and it was kind of a free floating desk workstation.
Yep.
Really beautifully done. And he asked me to install it, and so I went to go install it, and it was a commercial build out doing a renovation. And like the second to last screw, I hit a water line. And luckily, I must have just nicked it, because I was getting into the stages of cleaning up, and it was quiet in there. Luckily, there was no other subcontractors on site. It was super quiet in there, and I hear this little. And I'm like, uh-oh, that sounds like water dripping.
And Nick called me, and he said, I hit a water line. And I started laughing. I said, oh, sure you did, Nick. He said, no, I did. I'm going, oh, crap.
Oh, it was just that sinking feeling, no pun intended. But the funny thing, well, hindsight's 2020, I suppose, but I guess there was a sink on that wall.
There was a slop sink, I guess, on that wall. And I remember seeing a water line, but it was way down close to the floor, but it had been capped off. And I'm guessing it must have been maybe part of that line further up. I don't really know, but luckily the client didn't have an issue, and it was fixed and taken care of as best I know of. And one thing I'll say, I wanted Nick to do it because I trust Nick, and trust is a lot to me. And I'm glad he did, because when he called me and said he hit a water line, you may not get that from everybody that you hire. And I really appreciate that a lot. That means a lot to me.
Well, I appreciate that too. Yeah, nobody wants to make that call.
Right. No, exactly.
But that's, I mean, like I said, build out, renovation, brand new floors, new wall coverings, new everything.
Yep.
And luckily, with just that drip, they had the plumber coming the very next day.
Yep.
And they were able to fix it. Well, if I didn't say anything, you could have been $10,000 in damage on that new floor.
Easy. Yeah, this was a high-end office, and it was very nice. But yeah, I can't thank you again. I really do. It means a lot. It really does. Because there's a lot of guys, first of all, that wouldn't have even bothered listening.
Yeah.
And then admitting that they hit something. It just, well, if I walk away, it'll go away.
And I guess that's the life lesson for today is it sucks. It does. There's no way around it.
Nope.
Because the customers were just looking at it, because I had just put it down. I used those speed braces, and I had just set the slab on top. And they're like, "Oh, this is gorgeous." They were so happy. And they walk away for 5 minutes, and I'm like, "Uh-oh, I hear dripping." So, but no, I think it is best to say something. And I even told them, I said, "I don't know. Maybe it's a hot water line, and somebody just used because I know with old copper pipes, if they go through wood, you get hot water rushing through them. It expands the copper, and if it rubs on that wood, you'll hear a clicking."
Okay.
And I'm like, it could be, but I'm pretty sure I'm the only one in here. I'm pretty sure they're probably using PEX for this. It's not. I might as well say something, because better.
Yep.
And I was lucky too, because they said they were having the plumber out the next day.
Yep.
And on one of the screw holes, I had hit the protector plate.
Right. And
I'm like, okay, good. And I stopped. And for those that aren't aware, I don't know, building code varies from region to region, but a lot of times with plumbing or electrical, you have to put a little steel plate on the stud. And that way, in this case, if somebody's going to drill, hang a picture, do whatever, they hit that plate. And it doesn't mean press harder or get a metal cutting drill bit.
No.
It means stop, that you're hitting something. And so I had to omit the screw in that area. And then but literally the very next screw that was 12 inches away.
Wow.
Yeah,
it happens. That's a whole subject for another one. Things you run into, but
yeah. Because then Bob was asking me to look at a mantle job where we're going to build a mantle and install it. And I said, I don't know if you want me installing it. I might drill right into the flue.
We'll worry about that.
But that'll be an interesting one. Hopefully I can work with Bob and turn that one into a video, because and that's another thing we can talk about too, is when we delivered the cabinet you just did. But same client, and now they're searching for a mantle, but they have a really rough textured stone veneer for the front of this fireplace.
Right.
And Bob and I have been racking our brains about it. And although maybe not the cheapest option, doing it right is really kind of the best route to go in instances like that.
Yep.
And we're 90% sure we're going to have to cut away that stone veneer. And because scribing around this, I think, would just look hokey.
I think it would too, because there's so many variations of.
I would say the veneer undulates probably close to 2 inches from peak to valley.
Yep, exactly.
And it's so asymmetrical. I think the tops, and that's what even made it worse, because then your mantle's going to look beveled, because I think the top stuck out more than the bottom, or vice versa.
Exactly.
But they're in search of a really gorgeous statement mantle, and with the figured wood that Bob deals with, I think we can figure out something that would just be absolutely cool.
I think so too.
But yeah, I'll just make sure not to drill into. Do you smell it? I smell gas.
Yeah. Well, there's no water lines in the brick, so.
Is that a natural wood fireplace, or is that natural gas?
I'm not really sure. I'll ask though.
Okay.
I'll ask.
Yeah, that'd be. Now, granted, I don't think you should be running gas lines up the flue anywhere near the mantle, but
No, I wouldn't think so. But who knows?
explosion in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Two
Yep.
men led to the hospital
Yep.
holding a large maple mantle.
Yep. Yep. That's true.
Where were we even on the
We
topic
were
now?
talking about the radial arm saw.
Yeah.
And all the things. And I don't even know. We got so far off track. Do we have any time left?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we got about 15 minutes.
Okay. I guess again, it's when you want to build something and you don't have the right tools or the right thing, you have to think outside the box and think of a way you can get things done. I hate to say this, but people in third world countries do a really good job of getting by with what they have and making it work. And I think we're spoiled in a way that if we don't think we have the right tool, we just won't do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a sucky attitude.
Yeah, it is.
Just because you don't have the right tool or the big tool or whatever, there's a lot of ways you can get around things.
Improvise, adapt,
Yep.
and overcome.
Yep, exactly.
And that's a good point too to bring up. If somebody were to have, say, a little sidewinder skill saw that they got at the pawn shop or off eBay or whatever, if you find yourself 6 months, a year down the line using something again and again and again, that might be the tool then. Make a mental note that you upgrade. Yeah,
Yep, exactly.
I know a lot of people give some of the higher end brand tools crap and it's overpriced. For a guy that's using, say, a track saw, and we'll say Festool track saw or even a Makita, or I know Grizzly makes one.
And I think DeWalt does too. I think.
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
Believe so. I
Okay.
think so.
But if a guy's breaking down sheet goods again and again on job sites, or needs that mobility, needs a little bit more of that accuracy, but he continues to reach for.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with investing time into a tool that it'll save you a little bit of time, money.
Right.
It'll be more accurate. But yeah, that would be like me buying a $700 scroll saw when I'm rarely on the scroll saw.
Well, and I'll tell you, this is one that always kind of ticks me off is people will say, well, you've got all these expensive tools. It's no wonder you can build everything. And they'll be driving a $60,000 pickup. My tools were a whole lot less than what that pickup was. And I bought them over 40 years. So, it's just, there's nothing wrong with saving up your money and buying a better tool, if you can. And to me, that all plays into what Nick had begun with is that you can't do this because you don't have this or that or whatever. There's nothing wrong with getting something a little less expensive to start with and then saving up your money. And like Nick said, if you're doing the same job over and over and over, invest in a good tool. It's a good investment in a tool is worth its weight in gold because it will always be consistent. It'll always be good. You can buy Harbor Freight stuff and it's no knock on Harbor Freight, but a $10 tool versus a $100 tool, there's a big difference and there's a reason why.
Yeah. And a lot of times there is. Yeah.
Anybody that's doing it for a living or spending a lot of time at it, it pays to have good tools.
Yeah.
And
that's a key difference too. If somebody's kind of on the weekends trying to just, kind of a weekend woodworker or just kind of a hobbyist, which I kind of consider myself, I don't buy the highest end. Like my wet sharpener is made by Wen. I think I paid, I want to say $70-$80 for it. When they have very comparable name brand units for $600-$700.
Right.
Well, I'm not a pure hand plane kind of guy to where I'm running a plane iron on that every day. If I were, maybe I'd look at a different brand because I'm a little bit tighter tolerances. But my table saw I splurged on. I wanted to spend a little bit more money on. My bandsaw is a higher end bandsaw, my floor model, but and then I bought and sold tools that I know you have over the years. You get one and then you get a deal on another one. You got to get rid of this one, or things change. I've been in 5 or 6 different shops, and sometimes you can't bring your saw with you, or do whatever.
And that brings up a good point. Buying something old and maybe fixing it up and using it. I mean, a lot of my tools are old. They're old. My bandsaw is over 100 years old. My drill press is from before World War II, or not my drill press, I'm sorry, one of my bandsaws. You know, but the stuff works. It's bearings and belts. It isn't anything exotic. They have to fix it up sometimes. There's a lot of good people out there that'll help you make stuff
Do you have any
better.
resources for? Because I know even you know Frank Hallworth a little bit on from one of the forums.
Yep. Yeah, from the old woodworking machines forum.
Old Woodworking Machines forum. Is that what's the website? Do you know?
OWWM.org.
Okay,
And that's
owwm.org.
that's the forum itself.
Yep.
And yeah, they have rules about what you can post and how you can post it. And some people say they're curmudgeons, but I'll tell you, it's a wealth of information and nice people.
Yeah.
I know the guy that started it, and he's as honest as the day is long, and he's just a good guy, and he's not out to pick on anybody or anything. But yeah, they have rules, and they expect you to abide by them. You know, you don't go on there and ask what something is worth because there's too many variables.
Yeah.
But if you have an old bandsaw and you're needing a part, somebody out there probably has it, and they'll either give it to you or sell it to you at a low cost.
And any whether it's Facebook groups or forums or any avenue like that, try and be as specific as you can, because lately I've been seeing a whole lot of this. I'm making a woodworking project. What do I finish it with?
Yeah,
that's the question.
Yeah, that's
you're like, oh my gosh, you're gonna get a million different answers, and be specific. Is it indoor, outdoor? What wood are you using? Do you want to be able to clean it up with water? Do you mind using mineral spirits? You know, is it going to be in direct sunlight? Is it a surface that you're going to need? You know, for like a kitchen table, you need a lot more wear and tear than say a little piece that you hang on the wall.
Well, and it's, I'll tell you, one of the things that kind of bugs me is people will ask for information and you'll spend a lot of time telling them exactly what to do. You never hear back. You never get a thank you. I mean, it's not that I'm looking for a pat on the back, but, it's be nice to people.
Yeah. And it goes a long way, too, because if you sit there and you invest the time, you just want to know how,
right.
Like, oh, I appreciate that. I tried this technique, or I ended up going this route, or whatever, whether they did or didn't heed your advice.
Yep.
It's just kind of neat to see it kind of come together and say, by the way, I appreciate it. You taught me this or whatever. Of course, I didn't turn my bell notification thing or whatever on for my computer going ding in the background. But no, that's what was the website for that one again?
The OWWM.org.
Okay.
That's the old woodworking machines forum. There's another one that's vintagemachinery.org. It has all the manuals and just an absolutely ton of information on old tool companies, Delta, Crescent, Fay and Egan. I mean, anything and everything that goes back 150 years, you can almost find on there. It's amazing.
Yeah. And like you said, it's a lot of it for upgrading or updating these tools or just getting them into working condition is really almost kind of preventative maintenance type things, some bearings, belts, because all the castings are robust.
Right.
All the castings are good.
There are certain things like tires on bandsaws that you can go into things where people use, I think it's neoprene or rubber.
Yeah.
I'm a rubber guy because they just work for me.
Yeah.
But you'll find a ton of information on both those, and it would pay to sign up. And again, be polite, ask questions. Don't be stupid.
That's good advice in any aspect of life.
It is, because I'll tell you, I see a lot of it, and I'm not saying it's young, old, or whatever, but people are just rude.
Yeah.
And it's like, you really don't make friends that way. and
try to be magnanimous, folks.
Yeah, and just I'm glad to share information and talk to people, answer questions, but
because
be pleasant.
And Bob is definitely a vintage tool guy, because I think there was more than a few people surprised when you bought that Laguna bandsaw.
Yeah,
it's like that must be probably the only new tool in your shop.
Well, other than my edge sander I got last year, the Vega one. Those are the two newest things I've got.
Because you just bought a different table saw, and that's
right, but that's from 1990. So, but it's
newish.
It's newish for me. It's within 50 years, so yeah, it's pretty new. But and it's a slider. It's a little European slider saw that I wanted for years, and
there you go.
I think it'll work out well for what I want. So
Maybe we'll have to do some sort of bit of a video on that somehow, some way.
Well, I'd like to have an open house someday too. You and I have an open house at the
Yeah.
shop. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, that would be. We toyed around with that idea. We
Yep.
should we should definitely
We should do that like either spring or fall or whatever.
when there's not snow on the ground.
Yeah, when we don't have 12 inches of snow sitting there.
Yeah, we had a mini blizzard last night or night before.
Night before. Yep.
The days are just blending. I'm getting old. They're just all blending together. I'm one of those people to where if you talk about the early 90s, I think that's 10 years ago. Or the 70s is 30 years ago.
Yep.
And I'm like, no.
You're missing 20 in there somewhere.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. I keep thinking it's 1974, so that's okay.
Let's see here. What else did I have on my list? Another thing. I was talking with Dave Miller, KSFWG. This was a little while back, and he was talking about possibly ordering some figured wood from you.
Okay.
But speaking of like a meetup, my suggestion, and because Bob sells pallets of this highly figured wood, it's just gorgeous stuff. But I had kind of the idea that if anyone has a woodworking guild, a club, a gathering, whatever, they could go in on it, and that would make it, super affordable.
Shipping by pallet is always cheaper than shipping little bundles by FedEx.
Yeah.
You're paying, and everything is different. But if you ship a pallet of 400 feet, you're spending probably $400 if you ship it to a terminal. If you turn around and ship 400 feet by FedEx, you'd be paying probably 100 times that much, literally.
Yeah.
What
do you think shipping of a pallet wood? What do you think per board foot? What do you think that adds to it?
On a pallet, I would say it runs between $1 to $2 a board foot.
And what do you sell, say, curly maple for?
$4.50 a foot.
So for six and a half a board foot landed.
Yep.
I think that's pretty reasonable.
I think it is, but everybody's different. But yeah, if you can get together with people and order enough on a skid and we can work it out, and there's 100 different ways you can ship. There's a flat rate pallet through FedEx, believe it or not. But you have to pick the stuff up at a terminal. That's kind of one of the big things. If you have it shipped to your house, you're going to pay a lot more.
Yeah.
It's just how
But even if it's shipped to a terminal, if somebody's got a pickup truck, they can load it with a forklift.
Can haul it.
Boom.
You bet.
And if you're nice to them, they won't even damage your truck.
No, exactly. Exactly.
Because Bob and I just banded up some absolutely large, gorgeous, curly cherry. And where did that get shipped out of to Pennsylvania? Or no?
No, it got shipped to Maine.
Maine.
Yep. It came from Pennsylvania to me, and then it got shipped to Maine.
Yeah. It happens that way where the wood travels around until buyers buy it. But what do you think the biggest board was on that one?
It was just under 18 inches wide.
18 inches wide.
12 feet, 7 inches long.
So almost 13 foot long. And that was 12 quarter? No,
it was 8 quarter.
8 quarter.
All 8 quarter. There was 222 feet that went out. It wasn't that big of a bundle, but it was really long.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I didn't do the shipping on that one. The customer arranged all the shipping, but I did ship a load like that to California. Is actually more than that to California for under $500.
And I'll put a picture on the web article and then in the YouTube video, but of that sitting on the flatbed because Bob and I just brought that to the terminel. Last week. Yeah, last week. That was some gorgeous stuff.
It was very pretty stuff.
I would like to see those trees standing, because there was really no heartwood or any sapwood to that. No.
Where I buy this from is a mill that saws only veneer logs.
Okay.
Because he slices veneer also. And I'm lucky because I buy all his curly cherry. And I'm waiting for him to find me some curly walnut because that's the other thing he saws is walnut. And Pennsylvania has some absolutely beautiful timber, and this guy knows his business very well. And I would love to get some walnut that matches that curly cherry.
That would be awesome.
But I just talked with him not too long ago, and he was talking about a log sale that he bought that each tree averages 800 feet in a tree.
Wow.
So that's like 3 16-foot logs of clear cherry. Each log would be 30 inches across.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable the size of some of these trees.
I'll have to post a picture of that. I think I got a picture of that wood on my phone. Maybe I'll post that on Instagram or whatever. But another thing I just thought would be interesting, and we're getting a little short on time here, but you have a Veneer Log auction coming up, don't you?
Yeah, that should be, I think, towards the end of this month. I'm not sure of the date yet. Last year it was yesterday, but this year it's delayed because of the weather. Yeah, that's something to see. The auction lasts a whole week.
Oh, wow.
It's not just a one-day thing, and there's usually 4 or 5 going on at different yards around Upper Michigan.
Okay.
But you go there, these logs are all laid out. This one had like 250 last year. And then they slice a cookie off the end. They break the cookie apart so you can see the figure that's in the log. And one of the things I'll say that I never realized is figure does not go all the way around the log.
No.
It's only in spots and only maybe quarter of the log or half the log or 2 feet of the log. You just don't know. But when you see these logs and you hear about the prices of, $30, $40, $50, $60, $70,000 for some of these logs, well, you better know what you're doing because you're hanging out there if it's not good.
It's some expensive firewood.
It's an expensive firewood. And these logs are not big. You would think, you're talking big 4-foot logs. These are all under usually 2 feet across. They're 16, 18, 20, 24 inches across. They aren't real big.
By about how long?
Anywhere, these last year were all around 9 to 12 feet,
okay,
which is short for a veneer log. I know when the loggers cut veneer logs, they always have to cut them at 16 feet. But then the first thing they do when they take them into the veneer mill is saw 2 feet off each end.
And that's just a checking prevention?
Yep. Then they're steamed and cooked and all that stuff. But yeah, it's a fascinating thing going to the sale and walking around and meeting the guys, the buyers, the veneer buyers. It's a fun time.
And what are typically maybe we'll talk about this in the next podcast because this could be kind of a whole thing.
I'll have some pictures and stuff, yeah.
Because not everyone has heard of a Veneer Log auction.
Right. It's something totally different.
Yeah. We'll reserve that for the next week's podcast.
Okay.
Or we'll try and do one in a week.
Okay.
We're kind of sporadic here.
Yes. We have no set schedule. Our paychecks don't matter. So.
Man, winning the lotto a few years ago really helped me out.
Yeah. I still have some left.
Anything you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I really enjoy doing these. I enjoy working with you. I don't think people realize what it all takes to set one of these up, and Nick does a really good job, and I can't thank him enough.
Well, yeah, I try.
You do. You do.
And for those watching on YouTube, I ordered some different chairs and a round table. I don't know if I mentioned that at the top of the podcast or not.
Yep.
But those will be here like tomorrow when we're recording this. So hopefully the next podcast will like be officially sitting at like a table.
If you were really talented, you could put the table up tomorrow and superimpose us around it.
Not that talented.
I didn't think so.
I'll leave that CGI animation stuff to the pros. Awesome. Well, thanks again, everyone, again on Patreon, patreon.com/the Woodworking Podcast for supporting the podcast. And if anyone cares to go leave a review over at iTunes, that definitely helps. And that's about all I have. You can find more information at thewoodworkingpodcast.com. And as for Bob and myself, we will bid you adieu until next time.
See ya.
Thanks.